Hey, what's up Reefers? A quick PSA before we go into today's video, which is going to be quite long, I'm sorry. So recently, our good friend Rico's Reef Tank's YouTube channel got taken down by YouTube accidentally. While they're sorting that out, there's a new channel up called Rico's Aquariums. Be sure to head on over there, hit that subscribe button, and join in on the live stream because you know there's always a lot of knowledgeable and helpful people in those live streams to help people out. So once again, it's Rico's Aquariums. I'm gonna have the link in the video description below. Alright, let's get to today's video. It's gonna be a little bit long, but it is the final update on the Dropoff Tank. I'm gonna talk about the equipment I use, and then I'm gonna talk about the livestock I have in this tank, and then I'm gonna conclude it with some final thoughts. So let's get on with the video. Hey, what's up Reefers? This is not a clickbait. This is the final update on the 17-gallon drop-off tank.
This tank will be taken down tomorrow morning.
So this is the last night I have with this tank right here. Really? So for those of you who have been following the channel, you know that the frogfish Mochi that lived in this tank for the last year recently passed on. And the tank has been kind of like holding steady like this for the past 3 or 4 weeks already. I have been brainstorming to see if I want to keep another fish like that in this tank, and ultimately I just couldn't do it. Nobody could replace Mochi. With that in mind, this tank would just be another reef tank that I have going on. It takes a lot of energy and effort to keep a tank up like this, especially a smaller tank like this that requires a lot of kind of like quick maintenance, quick reaction to changes.
It's just too much work.
So I think the best course of action is just to really decisively shut it down, consolidate, and then we'll move on. Alright guys, so this video will be slightly long-winded because I want to give like a final overview of this tank, lessons learned, and just any closing last words. I've never done a video like this because I've never had the opportunity to talk about a tank before it's shut down. Usually I shut the tank down based on disaster, or I just totally got out of the hobby. Never thought of making a video. So this is the first for me, so pardon me if I start rambling. For those of you who may not know the history of this tank, basically this is a 17-gallon drop-off tank made by Acrylic. I bought this tank for $300. This is one of the first drop-off tank ever hit the market. This is actually the prototype, and it actually was entered into a freshwater planet tank competition and won first place. It is super cool. These guys are obviously super talented, and this is actually one of the first options for a nano drop-off tank back in the days. This was like about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. The original concept for this tank is to create a reef crest. That's why you see the scape of the rock. It kind of sticks out. And I've been debating whether I want rock at the bottom or not. Ultimately, I decided to just have rocks at the top, and then we're going with a green star polyp field, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So the original reason that this tank came to be is actually because of this light right here. This is the ONF Flat 1 light from Taiwan. I believe there's only one distributor in the US market right now. If you are interested, I'll get the information and leave them in the comments below. But this light has been performing beautifully. Essentially, the manufacturer reached out to me and say that, hey, you know what, we got this light. They have been proven in Planet Tank. We want to see if it can be done over a reef tank as well. So I took on this challenge without even having a tank, figured that I'll buy a tank just to test this light out because this light is beautiful. Initially, I had my doubt about this light because it looks beautiful, but I thought, maybe just another light coming out from Asia. But after using it, I have been thoroughly impressed. I'm not just saying it because I got a free light, but well, you guys can look at all the videos and see all the different corals I was able to grow under this light. So this drop-off tank, the top part is really shallow, but the deep part is 24 inches. And as you can see, I have a nice variety of different corals in here. Up near the top, I got all the softies, LPS, and I even have an SPS. Even though it's the Monty cap, it's the easier SPS, lower light demanding ones. But I have no doubt that it should be able to keep a certain amount of SPS if you keep them a little bit on the shallower end. And softies and LPS should be no issue at all. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the corals in this tank a little bit later on. So the second thing I kind of touch on is the tank itself. So this is the 17-gallon acrylic tank by Acrylic. Back in the days, two years ago, it's not that long actually, this is one of the very, very few mass-produced drop-off tank that is a nano size. Nowadays, there's a lot more, and nowadays they're glass. This tank, I think new costs about like mid 300s. I spent $300 for this one right here. A lot of people pointed out that it actually has a pretty pretty aggressive bowl. If you look straight on the tank, you see the two sides bulge out a little bit. I looked a little bit into it, and a lot of people saying that in terms of acrylic tank, a little bit bowling is completely okay, and I have no doubt that the tank can hold water and it's not going to leak because they know their stuff. I have 100% faith that this tank will be able to hold water. However, I have to say I'm not a big fan of acrylic tank because they're really easy to scratch. There are a lot of scratch marks that I don't even know where they came to be. Now, to that point, it is possible and it is supposed to be pretty easy to buff out all these scratches from acrylic tanks. I did not, even though I'm kind of OCD, I did not find the need to actually do it. So I kind of just left them be. But if I have a choice again in the future, I would probably stick to glass. Now, this is my opinion right now. It may very well change down the road. And which is okay because this hobby and people's preferences evolve over time as they learn more. But at the moment, I'm not a big fan of acrylic. That is not a knock on the quality of this tank. If you're okay with acrylic and if you're looking for a drop-off tank, I think our fully acrylic drop-off tank is definitely a tank that is worth looking into. So another thing that I added to this tank is actually the Ecotech Mp 10 you see down here. So for the first maybe 9 months of this tank's life, it does not have a pump down there. And talking to our fully acrylic, initially they said that yeah, the tank is okay without a pump down there because there's a gyrate going on with the water flow. But over time, I wanted more flow. I noticed that GSP is not really spreading, and I know that GSP needs a decent amount of flow to spread. So I decided to put an MP10 down there, and it made a huge difference. Especially because I want to keep a bare bottom. I want to keep the bottom relatively clear. So before detritus would collect down here, and I would need to siphon the detritus out almost like every 2-3 days. Nowadays with the MP10 blasting, there's almost no detritus down here. All of them get pushed back up. So to me personally, I think having a power head at the bottom deck for a drop-off tank is almost a must. It's not even a question. I highly recommend you to have some kind of pump at the bottom portion to push the detritus up, especially if you are running a bare bottom tank. Now again, this is my personal opinion, but if I were to set up a drop-off tank, 100% some kind of flow down there to push water back up to the top portion. Alright guys, in terms of filtration, if we look in the back, even though I pulled it out, but you can see that there's a media basket in back there. It's called the in-tank media basket. The first chamber, which is empty right now, usually holds filter floss to kind of act as a mechanical filtration. It would trap all the detritus. Second chamber, we got Clean Blue, I believe. I just got a bag of that. It's basically carbon and GFO. And the last and third chamber is a bunch of marine pure spheres. Now on top of this chamber right here, over here, there's like a kind of like a hidden chambers at the bottom. So that's where even more marine pure spheres sits for biological filtration. And over here we got the standard heaters. We got a auto top-off system. I'm using a Smart ATO, which has been running pretty well. And this right here, this little guy right here, is actually a new addition. A few weeks back, all the Zoa has been closed up. It's actually been closed up for a couple months. And finally I figured out that with Eat Sleep Reef's help, it was actually because of high phosphate. I tried many different things, which I'll get into a little bit later when we talk about livestock. But what it boils down to is high phosphate. So I got this Innovative Marine Minimax Media Reactor, and I've just been running GFO in it, and it has been working beautifully. Alright, Reefers, now we're going to talk about the good stuff, the livestock. For that, we're going to go back to the old school, and we're going to do the run and gun style. Let's go. Alright guys, livestock update on the drop-off tank. Where do I begin? I gotta talk about the Zoas, the GSP, the Fathead Dendro, the Monty, and the fish. Let's talk about Zoa first. So for the last, I'll say almost 3 months, I've been having issue with the Zoas closing up. As you can see, that issue has been resolved thanks to Eat Sleep Reef's recommendation. So I was testing my phosphate, it was sitting at 170, which is really high. So what I ended up doing was buying the Innovative Marine Mini Max Media Reactor. So this media reactor has some mixed review, but in my case, I have really positive experience with it. And I've just been running GFO with this for the last month. And the phosphate has come down, and sure enough, all these zoas are opened and happy once again. So there are many reasons that zoa may be closed, but in my case, I do believe that high phosphate was a cause. And just like Gsp Reef said, as soon as the phosphate dipped below 100, the zoa started opening up again. Now, a lot of them had lost color. They kind of browned out a little bit. But as you can see with the Rastas and Sunny D, the color are definitely coming back, and they are happy once again. So the next thing I can talk about is the green star polyp. You see the mat has grown really well. And also down there, the couple pieces actually started connecting. I was really tempted to keep the tank going just to see the entire bottom part get completely carpeted. But ultimately I was like, you know what, just not, this is too much work. So that is going. And actually, I actually left this piece on to grow so I could frag it off and give it to people in a nice big mat instead of like tiny frags. But green star polyp, yeah, I have been a champ. This tank has been a champ growing GSP. And what I find out is that they do like medium to high flow and high light. You notice that all the ones that I super glued to the edge as vertical, they're not doing well. They receive decent flow, but they're not getting enough light versus the ones here, especially the ones that's being blasted by the MP10. I noticed those grow the fastest. And also, if you want to carpet something with GSP, try not to put them on plug, because you see the plug like right there, even though it looks kind of cool, it actually takes them a long time to go from the plug to the acrylic, whether it's the bottom panel or the back chamber. So anything that I laid out, like this piece right here, I just kind of super glued directly to the acrylic at the bottom. It spread immediately. Versus a plug, I waited for maybe like 3 or 4 months before it started like hopping off the plug onto acrylic. These just started growing immediately. In terms of GSP control, I know one of the last video I did on GSP mentioned that I'm losing a battle. However, I found a way to combat it. I was able to take this piece of rock out, and I simply used a wire brush to brush off the GSP. The wire brush actually worked really well, and this is the wire brush that I use. I was able to just brush it off really easily. I was hoping to peel it off as a mat, but that was not meant to be, so I used a wire brush. And afterwards, I actually used a Aptasia X, which I have here as well, to lay down a small perimeter right around the rock, and that really knocked back the GSP, and they have not grown there for I think maybe like 2-3 months. So this actually worked really well. It just kind of kills off the edge of GSP. But in terms of GSP, this tank has been growing them like crazy. Again, it's medium to high lights, medium to high flow, and you have all the GSP you ever want. So next thing I want to talk about is the fed head dendro. So this colony has gone from like a 2.5 head to this size in about, I think it's like 8 months. And that too is actually, these little polyps were saved from the larger fed head dendro colony that I lost. I lost that colony because of, I think number one, it was actually it's 2 things. Either lack of feeding or it's gut rots, meaning that I fed too much because I was feeding them pretty large size ghost shrimp. And maybe it did not digest in time, started rotting from the inside out. Whatever the cause is, that colony was gone, but I was able to save maybe like 1.5 polyp, and as you can see, they are starting to grow, so that's good news. And that right there, I actually almost lost that one as well, because I went on vacation to Orlando, and I did not feed this guy for about 10 days. And they were in sad shape. They were pretty much non-responsive. But one night I was able to catch them with some tentacles out from one of the polyp. I just gut loaded that guy, and thankfully it seems like they do share energy, they do share nutrient between the different polyps, because the tissue is still connecting, unlike that one. So they bounce back really quickly. The second day you see all the polyps, all the tentacles started coming out. I was able to feed them a really nice meal that day. So since then I have just been kept up with feeding every 3 days or so. I should technically feed them every single day, but sometimes just too much work. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about in this tank, actually no, second to last, is actually the Monty cap. So the Monty Cap has been doing surprisingly well, considering that I hardly dose anything, and every time I check the alkalinity in this tank, the swing is pretty significant. But for the most part, I try to keep this tank at around 7, and as you can see, the Monty Cap has been growing well and has been encrusting. So this has definitely been a surprise. That's been a surprise in this tank that has been doing so well. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about in this tank is that little guy right there. So a lot of you guys have come to know this little fish, the yellow-tailed blue damsel, as Mustang, and it was Telegram Jim who named this fish because this fish reminds him of a fighter jet, a fighter plane that has a blue front and yellow tail on Mustang. So Mustang was actually the first fish that came into this tank. Initially, he was supposed to be just food for Mochi. For eventually, when I keep a frogfish, I just kept him in here, thinking that okay, once I add the frogfish is gonna gulp down the damsel's meal. But somehow they become either friends or just like business partner. For whatever reason, Mustang just kept surviving, even when other yellow-tailed blue damsel get consumed by Mochi. But I don't know what he did, what kind of deal he made. He has just been around. And a lot of people joke that this little damsel is gonna outlive the frogfish, and sure enough, this little guy showed up victorious. Yeah, he is bulletproof. So a lot of you guys may be wondering what's gonna happen to this damsel. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure yet. I am tempted to add this damsel to the 45-gallon cube tank, which I may regret later on because of how aggressive damsels are. However, in that tank, I pretty much just have like 2 clownfish, 1 bicolor blenny, and a yashagobi. So he may do okay. On the other hand, I may give him up to one of my friend's tank. I have not decided yet. So he may go into the refugium for now in the 45, well, tomorrow morning until I decide what to do with him. But I think me and quite a few of you may have started growing attached to little Mustang right here, the little fish that beats all the odds. So that is pretty much all the update on the livestock in this tank. Of course, we got like a random Gorgonian here. We got the Kryptonite candy cane that has always been doing well. We got the BTA that's hating life. Something is just bothering him big time in this tank. But I think I cover most of the major livestock. Some of you guys asked like, how do I get these zoas to spread so fast in this tank? Honestly, I don't know. I think the tank just dirty because I feed the fathead dendra so often. So there's a lot of dissolved organic in this tank, which soft corals do like. I do try to pull these zoas off the frag plug and super glue them directly on the rock. I'm not sure if that helps them spreading, but I definitely like the look a lot better. They just look so much more natural than growing off of a frag plug. So I think moving forward, whenever possible, I do prefer to kind of pull the corals off the plug and mount them directly onto the rock, just like this. It just looks so much more natural. All right, Reefers, so this is it, the final update of the Dropoff Tank. I just want to be here to thank you guys for the last year and a half for following along on this Dropoff Tank build. This tank is a dream come true to me. This is one of my first conceptual tank. There are a lot of things I wanted to do and I tried it here. And along the way, number one, first of all, again, thank you guys to kind of like follow along. And number two, seriously, big thanks to you guys for helping out. There are a lot of questions I had, a lot of decisions I had to make that I wasn't so sure about, and you guys are always there to give advice without pushing it on me. You know, you give me the options to choose which way I think is best, and I'm always upfront and honest with you guys on the decision I went with and why I went with that, whether it's good or bad. This past year and a half of this tank was just amazing. When I finally got one of my dream fish, a Watskin frogfish, it was dicey in the beginning because like how he arrived, but somehow he beat the odds, and you guys have been there with me the whole way. So if you ask me if I'm gonna miss this tank, hell yeah. You know, I know 100% I'll miss this tank. But I also know that without a fish like Mochi in this tank, This drop-off tank is just gonna be just another reef tank, you know? It's just gonna be like my 45-gallon tank. It's just gonna be like my 150-gallon tank that I'm building. So I can see the passion is gonna just slowly wean off. And instead of having it die a slow death, I figure I'll just pull the plug right now when it's still fresh in the mind, when everybody's still like, oh man, this tank is awesome, you know? And you know, it's tough as well to keep so many tanks going and also to make updates on so many different tanks. Nice for content, but I don't want to milk it this way. It's time to move on. It's gonna go to a really great home, Miss Average Reefer. All of you guys know and love. I'm sure she'll take good care of it. And the good part about that is that whenever I miss this tank, I can always swing by and check it out. And if you guys miss the tank, we can ask her to make a video. I've been asking her to do a YouTube channel. So yeah, thank you again for following along in the last year and a half on this 17-gallon drop-off tank. I'm gonna miss this guy. This is a special tank. Talk to you guys next week.
Good. 你睇住啊，嗰度有條線。
係。
嗯。
影啦，影啦，影啦。